Hey everyone, this is Miss Moriarty and I'm here to discuss with us topic 9.8, which is all about invasive species. So we have previously talked a little bit about invasive species in some earlier units, but in order to review what they are, an invasive species is one that tends to come into an area that it doesn't normally reside in, so it is a non-native species, but in this case it is a non-native species that's going to cause a lot of disruptions to the ecological relationships that are going to be found within that ecosystem. And a part of the reason why that is because those species don't have a natural predator that's going to control their population. They tend to be very competitive or maybe very aggressive, fast growers, can optimize using resources, and they can kind of thrive in habitats that they may not normally reside in. So some other characteristics that we tend to see with invasive species, which makes them, best at doing this, is the fact that they are often classified as a generalist type species when it comes to their niche or the role that they're going to play in their environment, as well as their reproductive strategies. And they are also known as an R-selected species. Back from when we talked about Unit 2, Unit 3, remember a generalist species is one that has a very wide range of tolerance, is very highly adaptable, and can live in a very broad range of niches. An R-selected species is one that doesn't particularly give much parental care, usually has lots and lots of offspring as a result, and so we tend to see very high biotic potential amongst those organisms. So these types of characteristics is kind of what gives the invasive species the key to coming into an environment that they may not know and kind of taking over. So some invasive species that we should be familiar with that has been on AP exams in the past has been the mentioning of zebra mussels. These were an invasive species transported by the ballast water in ships in the Great Lakes in the United States. They are very aggressive filter feeders, and they eat a lot of the algae in those aquatic ecosystems that a lot of the other species tend to rely on, which is how they outcompete native species. Another kind of human impact, though, with these invasive species is that they can actually clog lots of intake pipes, and it makes it very difficult for them to remove from ships or really any other structure that's going to be found within that waterway. Now, unfortunately, a part of ways to control them, we can't actually eat them because they are very good filter feeders. They has the potential to have a lot of toxins built into them. So eating the zebra mussels is actually not a good way to control them, unfortunately. Looking at the kudzu vine, this was one that actually came from Asia. It was originally came to the United States in order to try to limit soil erosion, as well as kind of just serve as like an ornamental type plant. But it turns out that they tend to outcompete all native plants in the southern U.S. for any sunlight, and so it kind of overgrows upon them and crowds them and unfortunately kills any native species nearby. Last and final invasive species is the Asian carp. This was the type of species that was brought into the United States around the 1970s or so to actually help control algal growth due to wastewater treatment. The Asian carp actually managed to escape their confinement during this time, and they wound up in the Mississippi River watershed, and as a result, they've now begun to outcompete native species for food and space, and we have seen a decline in fishery production and value in this area in the United States due to the Asian carp. Next invasive species would be pythons. These were brought to Florida as pets and unfortunately then released by pet owners who cannot continue to take care of them. This has decimated the mammal populations in the Everglades. Since the pythons are very aggressive hunters and they have no natural predator, they've been able to thrive in these ecosystems. The next is called the cane toad. This is also a species found in Florida as well as in Australia. It was introduced to eat cane beetles, but it became invasive because it has a tremendous appetite. It is very aggressive, very predatory. It is actually poisonous at all stages of its life cycle and has now driven a decline in many other amphibian species and reptiles because it can outcompete them. The last one, this one is new. I decided to add this one since we tend to see the spotted lanternfly a lot now. But actually, it was first spotted in the U.S. back in 2014 in Pennsylvania. It has spread kind of like along the northeast coast of the United States due to the import of like woody plants or wood products, and we've now seen that it can pose a very serious threat to industries like logging, as well as fruit trees, ornamentals, and timber. So we need to continue to, if you see a spotted lanternfly, you need to kill it and report it. All right, so how do we control populations of invasive species, and why do we need to? Right, so we know invasive species can certainly outcompete native species, but there is some human impact to that as well. It's actually estimated at around $120 billion a year is spent on trying to either control or prevent the spread of invasives. Because of those invasive species, we can see productivity in terms of agricultural crops decline, we could see tourism decline, property value, fishery decline, and so on. So some ways that we might be able to prevent that could be, stricter laws, right, preventing the transport maybe of invasives. We can remove maybe dead trees that may have been in contact with maybe spotted lanternflies or another type of invasive species. We could have better and careful boat cleaning or inspections, right, against zebra mussels. We could even introduce maybe a more biological control, or we can simply have a physical removal. We can have hunting, right, or killing and reporting of whatever invasive species that we may see, similar to the pythons, zebra mussels, and the spotted lanternfly. So here for practice FRQ on 9.8, identify one way we could help to control the spread of invasive species. Take a moment, pause the video, answer the practice FRQ in your notes and in the Edpuzzle. Okay, at this point we should have answered our FRQ. So here could be some ways we could help control the spread of invasives, kind of similar to like our integrated pest management we talked about back in Unit 5, but we could use a biological control, maybe find like a natural enemy of that invasive in hopes that maybe it can help to control their population. We could use a more mechanical type control, maybe like it's mowing or actually physically removing the species with like hunting. We could also use chemical pesticides if we truthfully need to do that as well. All right, everyone, that is it for the video on 9.8. Please leave a question at the end.